I recruited an unwitting army to annoy a jerk. A bit of context here. I work as a lawyer for an excellent and famous law firm here in northern Italy. My family went through some tough times. In the last 9 years, we had to face a brutal divorce with my dad having depleted every single cent he could. One of my aunts was brutally murdered because of a €150 cautionary deposit. My granddad was diagnosed with cancer, and some other funny stuff in the middle. Because of that, our bonds became stronger and stronger. Must say that with my family, I mean my mother, her parents and my 2 aunts this year, the virus managed to take away both my aunts. I loved them to the moon and back, but one of them was married to a complete jerk. He always considered himself to be better and smarter than anyone else. And so were his relatives. My aunt and her husband, I straight up refused to call him uncle, lived in a huge house, and so did his brother with her wife and son. He died around 7 to 8 years ago and left almost everything he could just to his brother and his family, completely ignoring my family because Opt's granddad is already rich. Why should I leave anything to his daughter and grandson? This year, my aunt was taken by the virus. I was grieving, since I really loved her and cared about her, and I already lost another aunt prior. When the notary called us to read the will, both me and my mother came out completely astonished. She left us just a few things, even though she always said she would have left us basically everything. I don't need the money involved that much, as I already inherited from my other aunt, and my job pays me really well, but my mom always had to struggle, financially speaking. It would have been a huge help, since she doesn't want anything from me. I tried to give her some money in the past, but she always sent them back, being stubborn as she can be. As we walked out, I pulled my cousin by my side to ask him just one thing. Hey, cousin, listen. I know it's a dumb question. But, when I last saw her, I brought my aunt a little ceramic bell, shaped as a lady. She held it to her chest all the time. I'd like to have it back, it would be a memory of her. He smiled at me as if I was the dumbest person on earth. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't know what I could do with that stupid bell, take it. But don't expect us to give you anything more. We had to sweat bullets for this will to work. I'm sorry, what you mean? He realized he screwed up, so he just left. My mom went back home. I headed back to my office to take a closer look on my aunt's will. It was bulletproof, and the handwriting was, without any doubt, my aunt's. So, what did he mean? It took me several weeks to finally get the clue. As previously mentioned by my husband. It was just this small phrase. My aunt's husband died 7 years before. How could he mention anything? Since zombies are still nowhere to be seen and I don't know of any deceased person talking from his grave, I started to scan the whole will once again. Things I never noticed became as clear as the sun. There were missing pages. My aunt numbered them, but the 2nd and 4th pages were missing, with sentences left hanging there. Some of the corrections were legit, but looking closely, there were a few of them where the uncertain hand of an 81-year-old lady suddenly became stronger and more precise. My aunt's husband was mentioned every time my aunt was talking about money and valuables. He did say something about the savings, but apparently his ties that were to be given to charity didn't need his approval. Strange, huh? When I talked to my mum and her parents about this, my granddad, who is 74 and still has more strength and lucidity than your average 40 years old dude, mentioned my aunt's husband's will. We don't know what he said. His family never let us even take a look at it and it wasn't worth it to sue them. I went back to the notary the next day, asking to see the will. Since I was a relative, he let me, but asked what was going on. I simply said, "You'll know soon enough." When I read it, I started laughing so hard that even the secretary came to see what was going on. I rushed back to my office and started to write everything down. Stuff was about to hit the fan, but not for my family. After a few days, me, my mom, her parents, and my aunt's relatives met once again in front of the notary. I already told him what was happening. I could see him trying not to look disgusted as my aunt's husband's beloved ones walked in. Notary, we are all here. Apparently, Op has some things to discuss with us, concerning inheritances. You could hear a pin drop a mile away. I stood up and opened my bag. My family was smiling, my relatives were staring daggers from their eyes. Me, as we all know, Auntie left everything to you. Nothing is wrong here, as she didn't have any direct relationship with anyone in this room. What is wrong, is the reason behind it. I handed a copy of the will to everyone, with some parts being highlighted. Me, as you can see, pages are missing. Some corrections are different, to say the least. But, most importantly, my uncle is cited quite often. This led me to his will. At this point, my relatives turned whiter than snow. My cousin tried to stop me, telling me I couldn't possibly use my uncle's will, as more than 5 years passed. The notary told him that I totally could, as the allowance to contest a will is 10 years. He kept silent. Back in the early 90s, my friend, I'll call him John, was selling his RX-7 via an ad in the old print auto trader. It came out every Thursday, so that first weekend was critical for sales. The very first guy that came to see it on Saturday said he wanted to buy after driving it. Of course, he had to finance, so they couldn't finish the sale during the weekend. John was worried about losing all the bites from the new ad, so he asked for a deposit of $500. The guy wrote a check. John told the rest of the callers that weekend that it was sold and, unfortunately, didn't ask for their numbers in case it fell through. This story predates caller ID availability in my area by a couple of years, so those leads were gone. As you surely expect by now, the guy flakes on Monday and John deposits the check. Payment stopped. Big surprise. Sitting around my apartment, we schemed revenge, but all we had to go on was the check. Lucky for karma, there was a phone number printed on it. Our first idea was to write a little program to dial his number repeatedly from my modem, but that would be easily stopped and probably get us in direct trouble. Then John got a page from his work. This was back in the one-way pager days. You call the pager's dedicated phone number, it sounds a tone, then you punch digits for the number you want to be sent to the pager. The person with pager receives the number you entered and, presumably, calls it. Everyone with a pager made sure that people who needed to get a hold of them had the number for their pager. You'd see pager numbers in print and TV ads all the time for various services. Boom, angelic choir sings, heavenly light goes off. John's pager number and my pager number had the same prefix, middle 3 digits. What if we randomly dial numbers with that prefix and page them all to this guy's number? So, we order a pizza, open some beers, and start looking through the yellow pages at locksmiths and tow truck services to find more pager prefixes. We wind up with a dozen or so. After that, it's half an hour of coding in ye old ball and C++. I put together a program that would cycle through our list of known prefixes and add a random final 4 digits to get a random pager. It calls the pager's number, pauses, then dials this jerk's number and throws a 911 suffix on there for good measure, which is something people with pagers understood to indicate an emergency of some kind. We start eating the pizza and let it fly. I was very picky about my devices, so my modem was a US robotics courier. You could set an S register to control how long it would sound each tone when dialing. Uber nerds like myself would keep tinkering with that to get it as fast as possible while still being recognized by the phone service. It was very fast. It could run through 4 pages per minute, so this guy would get 240 calls/hour. We just watched it run and laughed our butts off. We realized pretty early on that we didn't really know if it was working, so we wandered down to the 7-Eleven and called him from a payphone, just in case he could somehow trace it or the police were on the case and watching. A man answered and I said, "Hello, I got a page at this number." I heard an audible sigh and then he just hung up. Gold. We ended up running it for a few hours, then let it go quiet for a few days. Then we scheduled it to start dialing in the middle of the night every few days, plus we'd fire it up by hand randomly whenever we had a party. We checked again from the 7 to 11 after a week and it went to an answering machine, which did the rapid tone at the end of the greeting to indicate the tape was full. We reasoned that the line was still ringing, anyway, so we kept at it for another month or so. Eventually, we got the disconnected warning when we made one of our regular checkups. I'm sure he just changed the number. I like to think about that guy answering the phone after a few days of silence when we started it up. I can vividly imagine his response at the "Did someone page me to this number?" as he slams the phone down and then it rings again a few seconds later. Or, of course, coming home from work and having an answering machine full of random people asking about being paged. And, yeah, we annoyed several thousand people into calling this guy by the end. But each of those people was only put out for a single call. A cost, yes, but a necessary one for justice. Thank you for listening to Campfire TTS. Please like, comment, and subscribe.